Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Marking the Times. I'm Dr. Mark Hitchcock here in my office at Faith Bible Church in Edmond, Oklahoma. It's my favorite time of year, beautiful time of year here in Oklahoma. Here in October, as temperature's gotten a lot cooler, and it's my favorite time of the year with football season going on and all. So it's a great time of the year, and I hope you're enjoying this season as well, wherever you are. We appreciate you joining us for these episodes. We like to talk about end time events, future events that we can see foreshadowed today in our world, and also answer questions you send in. So go to our Facebook page if you have questions about Bible prophecy or maybe other topics in Scripture, and we'll be glad to try to answer those in some of the episodes that are upcoming. What I want to talk about here just for a few minutes with you today is just kind of some signs of the times in our world we see taking place. There's a lot of turmoil right now over in the northern part of Syria, and with Turkey having invaded that area. President Trump's made the decision to take some of the U.S. troops from that area, and of course has been greatly criticized for that. And I don't really want to get into all those political ramifications of that. But as you see these nations that are involved in everything that's happening in the Middle East today, you just kind of see this cauldron over there. And really Syria is the real flashpoint where this is all taking place. The staging ground for all this is in the nation of Syria. And if you look at a map, Syria is just north of Israel. So this is happening right on the northern threshold, the northern doorstep of the nation of Israel. And what you have that's taking place there remarkably is foreshadowed here, or foreshadows what we see in Ezekiel 38. In Ezekiel chapter 38, many of you know this chapter well. Those of you who are students of Bible prophecy, comes right after Ezekiel 36 and 37, which speaks of a regathering of the Jewish people to their land in the end times, which we're seeing taking place right now before our eyes. But it lists a coalition of nations that will invade Israel in the end times. And when you look at the alignment of nations that are set forth for us here, kind of on the different sides, it's really mirrored exactly by what we see in the news today. In Ezekiel 38 and verse 2, Ezekiel says, "Son of man, set your face toward Gog of the land of Magog." So Gog is going to be the leader of this invasion. I don't know that his name will really be Gog, but Gog, some people think, means dark, or it could mean high or exalted. So it just kind of pictures what he'll be like. But he's of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, Tubal, and prophesy against him. Then he goes on and mentions these other nations: Persia, Ethiopia, Put, Gomer, Beth Togarmah. So there's 10 proper names that are listed there. And it's interesting, 4 of the names that are listed there, the names of Meshech and Tubal, and then Gomer and Togarmah, they're all in the modern day nation of Turkey. Now, none of these places here, these ancient places, exist on a map today, but we go back and find out in Ezekiel's day where these places were geographically, and we look for the modern counterpart of those nations. So 4 of the geographical places mentioned here are in modern day Turkey. Of course, we see Turkey in the news constantly today in that part of the world. Rosh is mentioned here, which I do think is Russia. And then you also have down in verse 5 the mention of Persia. And of course, Persia became Iran in 1935, and in the late 70s, it became the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so you have this kind of northern coalition that has gathered together that we see today. Russia, Turkey, and Iran, who are really close allies, they're all involved there now in Syria, again, which is right on the northern border of Israel. And it talks about how these nations in the end times are going to come down into the land of Israel in a surprise attack in the end. But what I also think is fascinating about the alignment of nations here, you go all the way down to Ezekiel 38, verse 13, we find out about some nations that are kind of sitting on the sidelines and protesting this invasion of Israel in the end times by Turkey, Russia, and Iran, and a few other nations. And those nations are Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish. Now, the merchants of Tarshish, some people believe that's a reference to the United States. That's possible. It seems a little tenuous to me to make that identification, and I've talked about that in other of these video blogs, so I don't want to go into that in detail. But the other nations mentioned here are Sheba and Dedan, which is the area of modern-day Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, which again right now are nations that are strongly opposed to what Iran is doing. They're on opposite sides. So as you look at Ezekiel 38, you have the aggressors against Israel in place today: Turkey, Russia, Iran, there in Syria on Israel's northern border. as well as a few of these other nations mentioned as well, Libya and Sudan and some of these other radical Islamic nations. But you also have the very nations today that would sit this out and be on the sidelines and that would protest what these nations are doing. Sheba, Dedan, Saudi Arabia, these Gulf states, the young lions of Tarshish probably at least are a lot of Western nations, kind of the Western powers, who would be against this or opposed to it. So what we see today really in the news that we read every day and we hear about is the alignment of these nations lining up exactly as we should expect if the end times are near. Again, no one knows when the Lord's coming back. None of us know that. It doesn't do any good to even try to predict it. But we know that the events in Ezekiel 38 happen after the rapture during the first half of the tribulation period. So if this is a setup for something that's probably a few years away, we already see this setup taking place. It should give us a sense of urgency about the coming of Jesus Christ. And so it's something that all of us need to continue to think about. We need to continue to look up. We need to continue to look and to labor for Jesus Christ as we await his coming. He could come at any moment. And things are lining up in our world that indicate that to us clearly. Well, thank you for joining us this week. We appreciate it very much. God bless you. I hope you have a good week.